Welcome. In this discussion today, we're going to talk a little bit more about color management, but specifically related to proofing devices. My key goal here today is to address the question of whether or not it makes sense to go ahead and upgrade your proofing system. Now, when we talk about a proofing solution, we're really talking about three different things. You have the proofing device, you have the RIP that drives the device, and then the color profiling solutions you do to use to manage color. For the purpose of this conversation, we're really just going to focus on proofing devices and specifically the Epson models and whether or not it makes sense to upgrade to the most current model that Epson released this year. So a lot of times when I'm talking with customers about proofing systems, or when customers reach out to us about proofing systems, we hear some pretty common complaints. The biggest by far is with color matching issues. And this oftentimes is not necessarily just because of the proofing device, the proofer itself. This is because of all three of those components: the proofing device, the RIP that's used to drive it, and the color management software and procedures that are being used. Some other common complaints will be related to things like the print heads clogging, not really being able to do much maintenance or service on the equipment yourself. You have to reach out to Epson to get a certified technician. And then the fact that the catch basket is not the most convenient device or way of catching the proofs. Now, speaking specifically about the Epson model, this is probably the most common proofing system in the print industry, used for proofing and predicting print and going through the color approval process. So the most current model is called the SureColor PSeries that most shops and trade shops and print facilities will use. And this one replaced the Stylist Pro. The big advantage in shifting to the PSeries when it came out 5 years ago was the fact that it incorporated a violet ink. So that was a big new thing. You can see down there at the bottom, that final bullet lists the ink jets or the ink colors for the Epson devices. So CMYK, light cyan, light magenta, light black, light black, orange, and green were also the same ink set that you had for the Stylist Pro. But what you were able to do with the PSeries is you could swap out the light black and put in a violet in place of that light black. And so this was a pretty big deal because it did worlds to expand your gamut. We'll talk just briefly about that here in a few minutes. Common sizes: 17, 24, 44 inches. Those are probably the three most common sizes. Ultimately, you'll look at your portfolio of work, try to figure out what's going to fit your job sizes, but also keeping in mind if you were to output multiple items, if you could gang things up to really try to optimize the media, you may be better suited to go to a larger format just for productivity purposes. And of course, Epson has just a whole world of different types of medias that you can choose from. And I thought this would make for a good kind of interesting historical look. 15 years ago, Stylist Pro 7800, that was released. That was an 8-color device. And since then, you can see they've done more and more to add colors, but also to improve printhead technologies and the ink technology itself, in addition to other device-related improvements. So each one of these kind of outlines some of the big promotional reasons why you may consider upgrading from one series to the next series. One thing I'll point out here is with the PSeries that was released this year, the 7570 and the 9570, there is no 5000 or 17-inch model for this one. So that's different than in the previous years, but you can still get the 5000, 7000, 9000 in addition to the 7570 and 9570 models that are available now. Specifically looking at the ink systems, this is where the real big difference is between them. The 7900 and the P7000 standard, not a huge difference there. The ink technology, there was an improvement in ink technology and in the printhead technology, but I mean, it's really the same ink set. However, you had the option again of choosing to replace the light black with a violet. And so that did worlds to really overall improve the gamut compared to the older model. And then with the release of the 7570 and 9570 this year, now that there's 12 inks, the Printhead has 12 inks, you don't even have to make that choice between light black and violet. You can have them both, to include having photo black and matte black as well. You don't have to make a choice between those two. So this is a big deal for this year. Now, in general, when we look at a proofing system, especially if color management is key, if color accuracy is important to you, you want to make sure that the proofing system has a larger gamut than what your printing press actually has. And for the most part, even with the Stylist Pro, that print gamut was pretty significant. And so it certainly did well to accurately simulate what was going to happen on a standard CMYK type press. As we expand into expanded gamut, as you look into spot colors though, that's where, you know, it wasn't quite as good. So when you added in the violet, that helped to overall expand the gamut. So now you could achieve even more colors. So what you see here is the larger gamut that's represented there is an actual proofing gamut for a P7000 with a violet. And then you have a CRPC6, which is like Grackle 2013, which is a standard reference print condition, CMYK, and you can see it definitely covers that. And then I threw in there the Pantone spot color coded library. So you can kind of see a comparison, and certainly the proofer does a much better job of capturing more of those Pantone colors. You could imagine brand colors as well. But there's still some outliers even with the violet added in. But overall, it does a really good job. Now, if we compare the 7900, the Stylist Pro, so that's pre-P-Series, to a P-Series 7000 with the violet, you can see that there's, again, a significant gain in gamut, 17%, as much as 17% increase in gamut. So that made it, you know, pretty worthwhile to consider upgrading from the Stylist Pro. If we now take that with the release of the 7500 and the 9500 this year, that adding that light black so that you now have 12 inks gives you just a little bit more of a boost. So now we're talking about an extra 6% beyond what a P7000 with the violet can do. So again, if you are looking for more gamut, each iteration is giving you sometimes a significant leap and then even a little push further. Now, when Epson launches a new device, they typically launch because of one of three key factors: printhead technology improvement, an ink technology improvement, or something with the device itself, the print engine itself. Now, with the P7000 or 7500 and the 9500, they really hit on all three of these. There's an improvement in printhead technology, ink technology, and the device itself. So we actually have a blog that you can go to if you'd like to find out more information, but I did pull some excerpts from that blog. And when we look at the printhead technology, I guess the biggest thing that I wanted to point out was the fact that this thing is now more than 2 times faster than the previous P-Series. So that's a significant improvement in efficiency and productivity that you can get out of this device compared to earlier models. Secondly, when we look at the printhead or the ink technology, because they expanded it into 12 inks, we now have the light black and the violet, which is giving us that extra boost. So when you think about comparing this device to a Stylist Pro, so anything prior to the P-Series, or when you compare it to a 7000, a P7000 or P9000, that's a standard edition where somebody chose not to get the violet ink. This is going to go a long ways to really giving you a big, significant boost in your CMYK or your overall gamut for that device. Now you compare that to a CMYK gamut from like a press, it's not going to be that impressive, but when you start looking at Pantone colors and spot colors and brand colors, that's where you're really going to get the bang for your buck there. So certainly a worthwhile consideration. And then they just all sorts of stuff that they hit on with the print engine upgrades themselves. So I have a whole big long list in that blog. Some of the ones I pulled out here: touchscreen interface makes it more user-friendly. Remember I mentioned the service having to call an Epson technician. Well, now they've made some simple user maintenance things that you can do to help keep the equipment up and running and to troubleshoot things. So that's certainly handy. And I really like the fact that they added this little internal LED light. So usually when you see something coming out of one of these Epson printers, you can't really see what's being printed. So you're just kind of hoping that you got the right job printing, or you know, you can go back and look at your print queue, but you don't, there's no way to really see it until it comes out past the little window. Now they have an LED light in there that lights it up pretty well so that you can actually see what's being printed as it's being printed. So that's pretty handy. They did make some improvements to the catch basket, but the real big thing that I think is worthwhile is the sealed media door, where it's kind of partially closes at this point. Well, it closes, but it doesn't really seal down. This leads to other problems with things like dust and printer heads getting clogged and other things like that. So having that sealed media door, I think, is going to go a long way to also helping with some of those typical maintenance issues that we hear for these proofing devices. So pretty cool that they did that. So again, we go back to that list of typical frustrations with printers. And I think that certainly with the P-Series and the P7570 and the 9570, they've gone a long way to really try to address some of these common complaints that we hear for proofing devices. So when does it make sense to look at an upgrade to your proofing system? I would say if you have a Stylist Pro, you're due. You're certainly due to look at, and I would skip past the P7000. I would jump right to the 7570 or 9570. Now note, there's not a 17-inch model. So they do have the P-Series P5000 that's still available, but get it with the violet. That's where you're gonna get the bang for your buck as far as an improvement in overall gamut. If you're having issues matching color or predicting color, it could be related to an older printer, but it could also be related to the consumables that you're using. So make sure that you're using approved media and ink. If you're using Epson's brand, you're certainly going to be in good shape. But if you go off-brand, that's going to require you to do your due diligence to properly color manage and create the profiles and linearize for the new media and the new ink. And if there's any shift in color of the media or the inks, if they're not stable, that's certainly going to create other print matching or color matching issues. Also consider the proofing rip that you're using and the profiling process that you're using. So that may incorporate software and or procedures that could be a potential issue. But these proofing devices certainly are capable of giving you a very good color match and predicting what's going to happen on press. If you're moving towards higher end type printing, CMYK or expanded gamut, this is probably a good time. You're probably going to have customers and color approval processes that may be a little bit more stringent than what you're used to. So certainly worthwhile to look at an upgrade to an improved proofing system. Same thing with spot colors though. It's not just about process. Being able to match Pantone brand colors. If you struggle with that today, having a device that incorporates the violet is going to be helpful. And of course, if you're a brand new pre-press or a brand new trade shop, it certainly makes sense to not just look at plates and graphics, pre-press type things, but also proofing process. That's got to be part of bringing that whole pre-press function in-house. And the one thing I'll throw a couple more things out here. Beyond the proofing device, I would re-look at the rips that you're using. So if you have an older proofing rip, or if you're just outputting straight from Illustrator, if you want accurate color management, and if you want the ability to really maximize the quality, the step and repeat things that you can do, optimizing media, all of those kinds of things, you need a good proofing rip that's going to also incorporate some type of color management. So that can be built into the rip, but it may be other profiling software that you're using offline. So I would reevaluate those as well and see if it's time to either upgrade or maybe update some of those practices and procedures that you have in place. And the final thing I'll throw out there is poor viewing conditions. If you don't have a good viewing space, that's certainly something that we would recommend that you do some sort of work to improve. So ultimately, I'm talking about your lighting conditions, but like a viewing station or a viewing space where it's very neutral and you have the right kind of lighting in there, so that when you're making assessments of your proofs and when you're comparing them to the press, that you're really getting an accurate perception of what that match really looks like. So hopefully these points give you some food for thought, some considerations for why you might be ready to upgrade your proofing system. If you have any questions, definitely give us a call. You can reach out to your APR technical sales rep or myself. We'd love to talk to you more. We can get you more information. With that, I thank you.